Bant Company, and Cory Dissinger, who is on Blue-Green Crush. So I'm excited to, again, see Cory on camera here with this sweet deck.
This guy's my man.
This is going to be basically the litmus test for the deck. He's 10-1, so I have to imagine that he has thrashed a plenty Bant Company opponents so far. Let's take a look and see how he does. One thing I do want to note is I love the names that people put for their own decks on their deck lists. So Cory refers to his deck as My Tentacle Romance, like we pointed out before, which is cool. But Andrew has called his Bant Company deck Patron Warrior, which is pretty analogous to Patron Warrior was just like the best deck in Hearthstone for quite a while, and so calling Bant Company Patron Warrior is pretty accurate. So Andrew's going to lead off here with a Duskwatch Recruiter, and Cory has that Noose Constrictor. So that is a card that kind of explains this deck. It's just this giant snake that is just twisting around you over the few turns.
Yeah, this deck
and
is
then
a
it starts
constrictor.
to squeeze, and it's just over.
Yeah. Noose Constrictor does a lot of good defense here, though, because it's going to be able to protect Cory from flyers like Selfless Spirit and Spell Queller. It also makes any Dromoka's commands that Andrew would want to fire off a lot more awkward, because Cory essentially has the opportunity to pseudo Force of Will them by discarding 2 cards to make his Noose Constrictor a 4/4.
Oh, Andrew is going to play an Evolving Wilds, use it to find a Plains and pass the turn, transforming his Duskwatch Recruiter into a Kralin Horde Howler on Cory's upkeep. Cory just has a copy of Jace Rinse Prodigy. Just going to pass the turn back. Noose Constrictor is going to stay home and do what it does best, defend the ground and the skies. It's a big old snake.
And Andrew had a 2-drop, which was great, but he did not have a turn 3 play, which is a little unfortunate. It would have nice to see another 2-drop or a Dromoka's Command there. And we've been seeing this a lot with the Bant Company decks, where people are playing like they don't have 2 spells on turns 2 and 3. They only have 1 total. And I have to imagine that might be an error in either deck building or mulliganing.
All right, so we have Andrew is going to attack in with his Kralin Horde Howler, do 3 points of damage, and knock Cory down to 17. He has an Expedition, which looks like it's a Canopy Vista, but we will get clarification on that. He's just going to play a Thalia Heretic Cathar on the cheap, only costing 2 mana because of that Kralin Horde Howler. Cory's going to draw a card for his turn, and let's see what he can cobble together here with the Jace and Noose Constrictor on the battlefield.
And if this was a post-board game, Cory might be worried about something like Negate or Clash of Wills, but considering it's game 1, oh, he can do Spell Queller, of course.
All right, so we have a Kiora. Master of the Depths is going to be countered by Spell Queller, again on the cheap. Only 2 mana from that Kralin Horde Howler. So missing that play on turn 3 really gets caught up on turn 4 by playing 2 spells. Is just the power of Duskwatch Recruiter. That card is real good.
Yeah, it is. Duskwatch Recruiter is great. And this is definitely what Andrew wants. You know, if we can just disclude turn 1, but on his first 4 turns of the game, he had 3 spells, which is exactly where you want to be.
All right, so on Andrew's 5th turn, he's just going to send all of his creatures into the red zone. Spell Queller, Kralin Horde Howler, and a Thalia Heretic Cathar. He has 4 mana sitting back,
and this,
which threatens a lot.
Yeah, and this screams Dromoka's Command, because if Cory blocks the Spell Queller and tries to discard a card to pump it up, Andrew can pull some powerful shenanigans with Dromoka's Command. He has the option to just put a +1/+1 counter on the Spell Queller and have his Howler fight the Jace, and then Cory would need to discard another card, but would most certainly lose his Jace. But because of the Howler, Andrew also has the option to play this Archangel Avacyn, making all of his creatures indestructible.
So Andrew is going to play that Archangel Avacyn. It is on the cheap from the Kralin Horde Howler. It will make his creatures indestructible. Spell Queller will live through combat, and Cory's going to take 6 points of damage and fall down to 11.
And this is what makes Avacyn so good, is that come into play, indestructible trigger. It is an effect that is worth real card advantage. We can see here that Avacyn allowed Andrew to attack for a bunch of damage, and then also force Cory to discard a card. In this case, it was a Den Protector, which is a pretty nice thing to just snipe out of your opponent's hand.
All right, so Andrew will use an Evolving Wilds to go find an island. Cory's going to loot with Jace, discarding an Evolving Wilds himself. And Andrew will pass the turn. Cory has a Kiora.
And Kiora ends up being one of the primary card draw engines in Cory's deck. Being his deck is all lands and creatures, so it has a pretty high probability to hit. And because he has a bunch of Den Protectors, if he does put a spell into his graveyard, he's likely going to be able to get it back. And this also just plays so well with flipping Jace.
Yeah, so he's going to get an Ishkana and a land from the Kiora -2. He's going to transform his Jace. And he will be able to use this to shrink one of Andrew's creatures. But he also could have just saved the Jace to block and transform. That does make it risky, as there's a potential Dromoka's command. But this Jace also, being transformed, can soak up some damage potentially and get Cory to a point where he can start surging Crush of Tentacles, which is really what he wants to be at.
Yeah, Andrew has had a pretty good draw. You know, I was kind of bemoaning that he didn't have a turn 3 play, but because he had 2 turn 4 plays, and then on top of it, this Avacyn that allowed him to push some extra damage, means that Andrew really has Cory on the ropes, and Cory needs to have something big to catch back up. We really need to see a Surge Crush of Tentacles on the following turn.
Well, it looks like he has Crush and Oath of Nissa in his hand, so if he has a land next turn, he will be able to do just that.
That'll be perfect. And even if he doesn't have a land, he's got all these one-ofs. One of the one-ofs he has is a Hangerback Walker. So he can technically even Surge Crush of Tentacles when he only has 5 mana.
All right. So it looks like the Jace Plus has targeted Thalia, so it is a 1/2.
And
now it's also interesting to note that Cory's 6th land to make all this work does need to be a basic land so that it enters the battlefield untapped because of that Thalia.
yeah, and with this Lumbering Falls, Cory's in a pretty dire scenario.
Do we have a lethal attack here, even through the blocker?
If
with the Lumbering Falls?
Well, I think what Andrew's going to do here is push as much damage as he can, and then use the Dromoka's command to potentially flip his Avacyn to try to finish him off. Because Cory's blocking the Avacyn with the Noose Constrictor, that's not going to work out. But if Cory had decided to block something else, Andrew would have had that as an option. If Andrew had a 7th land, he would be able to cast Dromoka's command and Lumbering Falls, and that would be devastating. But
this might actually end up being really nice for Cory if he can live through this turn, because this Crush of Tentacles will leave behind an 8/8, but he's also going to get a Kiora out of the whole ordeal because there's one under that Spell Queller.
yeah, well, he already has a Kiora, so they're going to legend rule each other, which is a little annoying.
Crush bounces everything back.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's not just creatures, it's all non-land permanents. The one thing that's a little dicey for Cory, though, is this Archangel Avacyn is going to be pretty annoying, because if Cory bounces all non-land permanents back to their owner's hand, if Andrew just has 5 mana open, he can just replay the Avacyn and potentially untap and attack or kill Cory with it. So Cory's pretty incentivized to try to kill this
well, he is
now.
going to discard 2 cards. It looked like an Ishkana and something else. So his hand currently is Oath of Nissa and Crush of Tentacles. So he'll have the top card that he can look at. He can minus the current Kiora to try and find another untapped land. And the Oath of Nissa to find an untapped land.
Yeah, and the Lumbering Falls is actually going to be problematic too. I think even with a Crush of Tentacles, Cory's going to need some more help. He might actually not even be able to afford playing Crush of Tentacles here. As it stands now, he's going to be going down to 4.
So this is after first strike damage is resolved. So he's taken 1 point of damage from the Thalia. So he's going to be taking 5 more damage from the other creatures and go down to 5.
What I would like to see Andrew do here is put a +1/+1 counter on one of his creatures to make it so that Cory took 7 damage, putting Cory down to 3, and then Lumbering Falls would be a lethal attacker.
All right, so Noose Constrictor is going to trade with Avacyn. Andrew is going to play a Duskwatch Recruiter and pass the turn.
So I believe Cory took 6 damage and should be at 4.
The first strike damage already happened, and then
Oh, I understand.
and then the 5 points.
So I was just working with the wrong life total for that whole combat step. Okay, well.
All right, well, Cory did pick up an untapped land here, so
The beauty of live television.
so let's see how he decides to do this turn. So he's going to minus his Kiora, find some more stuff. Well, there's the Den Protector.
And this is a big deal. Now that I have a better assessment of what the life total was, I actually would have liked to have seen Andrew just not attack with his Avacyn, because it's such a powerful threat in the face of Crush Up Tentacles.
So it looks like Andrew is going to take the Yavimaya Coast, and he's thinking about the Noose Constrictor. That's what he's going to take. Going to see an Oath of Nissa. Ooh, there's another Crush, so that's going to go on the bottom.
Yeah, but he gets a basic land, so he's going to be able to Surge or Crush this turn. He could even, I think there's one in his graveyard that he could flash back.
And so he's just going to play the Crush from hand. I think that I would have preferred to
Search the one from the graveyard?
search the one. But you know what? I'm not sure if you can surge it if you target it with Jace, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think Jace gives it flashback, and so when it has flashback, you can't play alternate costs. I know that much.
Got it.
We'll have to double check the wording on Jace to see if it allows you to play from the graveyard or just flashback.
Yeah, so if Andrew didn't have, or if Andrew had an Archangel Avacyn and all of his mana open, he really wouldn't have to worry about this Crush of Tentacles too much. But instead, as is, all he can really do is, activate his Duskwatch Recruiter, draw an extra card, but he doesn't really get to do anything else on the board. If you could find a Reflector Mage, that would be nice because you'd be able to bounce that 8/8 token. But this is going to be kind of tough for Andrew without some sort of flash flyer.
So the wording on Jace, you are able to actually pay the surge cost, so he could have flashed the one back in his graveyard. And I don't know if I'm a big fan of activating Duskwatch Recruiter there. I think I would have rather just left that mana up and flashed in a Spell Queller on Cory's end step.
Yeah, you'd be able to kill the Kiora. Yeah, flash flyers are really the best thing in this matchup for the Bank Company side.
All right, so Crush of Tentacles has stabilized the board for Cory.
Yep.
Let's see what Andrew can put together.
And now this is going to be really tough for Andrew from this point, because Cory's going to be able to operate with more and more mana and just get more stuff online, and he can keep crushing if he needs to. He can start, as soon as he gets 10 mana, which this deck will do, he can start looping Crush of Tentacles with Den Protector just over and over and over again.
And so Sylvan Advocate's going to come down for Andrew. It is souped up now, so it's a 4/5.
Still a pretty puny creature, though, in the face of an 8/8. Before, Andrew was facing no opposition on the board, but this 8/8 is quite the adversary.
And there is Athalia. And Andrew he's even free to attack with this 8/8 because he can untap it with Kiora if he wants to deploy some more blockers.
Yeah.
Although the blockers will enter the battlefield tapped, but he can untap them with Kiora.
Yeah, I think that's the more likely thing to do. Cory's going to have an easy time winning this game so long as it goes to a later stage. So all he wants to do is just do everything he can to preserve his life and just gum up the board, generate a lot more value, hit some land drops, and he's going to be golden if he can make it to the end game.
And so let's see how Cory decides to navigate this turn. He has a Kiora that he can use. He has that 8/8, decide if he wants to attack with it or not.
Mm-hmm. This is a little tricky because the Lumbering Falls is a lethal attacker. All of Cory's blockers are going to come into play tapped. And if Andrew has something like a Reflector Mage, that Octopus may disappear.
So he's not going to untap the Jace. He's just going to untap 2 lands.
And I think I would have liked to have seen just another creature untap just to play things safe and make it as punishing as possible for Andrew to attack, because as it stands now, all Andrew really needs is a Reflector Mage.
Yeah, if he's not going to use that last untapped mana, I don't see the benefit to untapping the land as opposed to untapping the Jace.
Mm-hmm.
Something like Reflector Mage Dromoka's Command just ends the game.
Yeah, and here Andrew has enough mana to activate Lumbering Falls, attack with it, and cast Dromoka's Command. So the fact that Noose Constrictor can just have cards discarded to it to get bigger means that Dromoka's Command is not actually that effective of a removal spell. But if Andrew attacked and Cory decided to block, let's say, the Lumbering Falls and the Thalia and let the Sylvan Advocate go through, Andrew would be able to punk him out of the game with that Dromoka's Command, putting a +1/+1 counter on the Sylvan Advocate and making it a 5-power attacker. So it looks like what he's going to try to do.
Yeah, this is a real enticing kill Thalia attack step, since it makes things much easier for Cory.
Yeah, because Thalia is like pretty problematic.
It looks like we're going to get a Dromoka's Command first.
So if you make the Lumbering Falls a 6/6, I think Cory has to discard his whole hand, and that will make it so the Noose Constrictor just trades with the Lumbering Falls. Andrew won't have any attacks, but he will wipe out Cory's entire hand.
Mm-hmm.
While this is a good trade in terms of card advantage, I don't know really if it's the best option, because Cory can just regenerate that card advantage quite quickly.
Yeah, with Kiora can draw 2. Jace is going to flip, allow him to surge.
Yeah, if he had attacked with all 3, he probably could have still made that play, but at least pushed some damage through.
Oh, well, he's not going to be able to search here unless he finds a spell to play. Oh, and he does, so he gets a Den Protector, so he can face down the Den Protector here and flashback.
Ooh, and there's Pulse of Marasa. Cory does have a few ways to gain life. Pulse of Marasa is going to help buffer his life total. And this is, one of the difficulties about facing this green-blue crush deck is it's so you can get it so low, but then it bounces back so quickly once it starts getting all of its mana online. It's so good at seeing a large amount of cards, and it can also gain life. And with Pulse of Marasa, it can even recur it with Den Protector or just flash it back with Jace, so that he's always going to find one, always have access to it, and if he needs to reuse it, he might even be able to do so.
Yeah, so Pulse of Marasa is going to be flashed back by Jace. He'll gain 6 life, get a basic land that he'll be able to play, and then face down his Den Protector. Man, this crush deck is real sweet to watch operate. It looks like Cory has put in thousands of hours playing with this deck, to be completely honest.
Yeah, this is just such a great story the more that I hear about it, because we heard that this is a deck that Cory actually had been playing a ton all through the previous season, but it just never had exactly what it needed. And then one of the big cards that seems like helps take it over the top is Emrakul, the Promised End. It just makes it so that it can get to the mid-late game, and no matter what your opponent has, you can trump it.
All right, so here's a Duskwatch Recruiter for Andrew. He's just going to pass the turn back. Den Protector is going to get turned face up. That's going to get back A Crush of Tentacles likely. No, just another Pulse of Marasa, which will allow him to get back another Den Protector, gain some more life, and continue the loop going.
Yeah, and this will just do so much for Cory. And once he's played out all of his Den Protectors, he can Crush of Tentacles, return them all to his hand, and cast them all over again if he wants.
He's also even able to attack here with his Octopus if he wants, because he's going to plus the Kiora.
Yeah, the 8/8 is no joke. You know, I know when I first looked at the spoiler, I saw Crush of Tentacles, and I was like, wow, this is a cool card that's going to be great in Limited, but I'll never play it in Standard.
Ooh.
But
Pulse is going to get hit by that Spell Queller.
that's not even that bad, though, because as soon as Cory casts a Crush and Tentacles, that Pulse of Mirage is just going to get cast at that point.
That Spell Queller is going to be able to attack Jason, make it so that he won't be able to get back to replay Crush of Tentacles, though.
Yeah, he could also just kill the Kiora. The Flash Flyers for Andrew are his best threats in the matchup by far. What goes on the ground loses its value as we get into the mid-game.
Yeah.
It's been pretty crazy, too. Andrew hasn't seen a Reflector Mage or a Collected Company to help find a Reflector Mage. Reflector Mage does a pretty good job of keeping tabs on the Octopus tokens.
Dramoka's command is going to put a counter on the Spell Queller, and it's going to fight off the Den Protector.
And now it can kill the Jace, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think that I would have played the spell before I plus the Jace. That way the Jace could have at least helped protect itself.
Yep.
Also, we knew about the Spell Queller, so maybe it would have been better just to flat out get Crush of Tentacles there.
Mm-hmm.
He has milled over a handful of them with that Kiora. To attack Jace.
And now that this
will kill Jace.
Jace is dead, Cory's he's got this 8/8, but he doesn't actually have that much more going on. Hopefully this Kiora can find some good piece of action for him.
Right, Kiora is going to minus. Well, there's a Den Protector.
Yeah, Den Protector's good. So unfortunately he only gets one card. He can get one land and one creature. His deck is mostly lands and creatures, so it's usually going to hit, but in this case he only gets a Den Protector, which is going to be able to do some good work.
And he's one land short of being able to Den Protector back a Crush and use it. Ooh, and Andrew has another
Spell Queller. So now things are looking bad for Cory. This game has swung back around. Andrew has been able to, he couldn't make much headway on Cory's life total, but he found some good places to attack Cory's sources of card advantage, and now Cory is out of sources of card advantage and could lose to this growing board on Andrew's side.
So Andrew's just going to draw for his turn. Looks like it's another copy of Archangel Avacyn, which is pretty big game. All right, Andrew's just going to attack with all of his creatures.
And if I were Andrew, I think I would actually prefer not to play my Avacyn because this is going to be 7 damage, putting Cory down to 4. And then even if Cory plays a Crush of Tentacles, you can just cast the Avacyn end of turn, and it'll just be a lethal attacker right away.
I think that is what Andrew is contemplating right now.
Mm-hmm. He gets to save his Thalia if he does it now, but his odds of winning through a Crush of Tentacles are so much higher if he doesn't cast the Avacyn now. And this is a tough thing to do. You know, you get so attached to your resources, especially Thalia. It's one of the flashy new cards. So good on Andrew to just say, I can just let that go. I don't need that resource anymore. And this...
All right, well, he is going to get an activation of Duskwatch Recruiter on Cory's upkeep with the transform trigger on the stack.
And what's nice about this is it's going to mean that...
Oh, he's not going to.
Okay, never mind. I was going to say what's nice about that is Cory can... Andrew will have enough mana to cast Avacyn with the Duskwatch Recruiter turning into the Kralin Horde Howler, because it'll reduce Avacyn's mana cost. But if Cory has some way to kill the Howler and then crush, Andrew's going to be unable to cast the Avacyn in any meaningful way.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Cory is going to find a Nissa. Vastwood Seer, he will play it. He's going to get a land and be able to transform that Nissa.
And he's going to get some redraws, but he needs something real good. He needs...
Oh, it's a Traverse.
Oh, wow.
That's going to turn into an Emrakul, potentially.
Can he cast it?
He has 7.
He has 7 mana.
Does he have 6 card types? He has the Hangerback Walker in his hand. He can play for 0.
Oh, my God. Well, Andrew played his turn to be safe against almost anything Cory could do, but there's nothing he can do against Emrakul.
How many card types? We have instant, sorcery, land, creature, planeswalker, artifact is 6.
And what's great about this is Cory's going to be able to cast
7.
Emrakul. He's going to be able to make Andrew attack the 3/4 Spell Queller into the Emrakul,
getting back Pulse of Marasa.
Yeah, Pulse of Marasa getting put back on the stack, which is going to buffer Cory's life total.
Get a Den Protector.
Yeah, get a Den Protector, get a Jace, get anything that's a good source of card advantage. And Andrew, seeing that line of play, is just going to scoop it up.
Emrakul, the Promised End, ladies and gentlemen, is going to get Cory out of this one. He is going to take the first game against Andrew Berke on Band Company. This is just awesome. Let's take a look at the sideboards. Andrew, he has 2 Tragic Arrogance, 3 Lambholt Pacifist, a Tireless Tracker, 2 Negate, 2 Ojutai's Command, 2 Nissa Vastwood Seer, 2 Declaration in Stone, and 1 Planar Outburst. How do we think he's going to sideboard here against the Crush deck?
Oh, that game was unreal. So I think that he's going to be bringing in the Negates just to fight all the shenanigans. He may want Nissa Vastwood Seer just so that he... has a little bit more card advantage. It's kind of good against Crush of Tentacles, bouncing everything back and forth. Ojutai's Command is also a good way to counter some of Cory's sources of card advantage. Outside of those cards, I don't think he'll want anything. He could bring in the Tireless Tracker, depending on if he feels like he has room. But mostly, I think it's going to be those counter spells that are going to do some good things for him in the matchup.
All right. Now on Cory's side, we have a Worldbreaker, an Ishkana Graft Widow, 1 Summary Dismissal, 4 Death Mist Raptor, 1 Void Shatter, 1 Clash of Wills, 2 Negate, 2 Aerial Volley, and 2 Gnarlwood Dryad. How do we think Cory's going to sideboard?
You know, we've gotten a chance to watch this deck a few more times. I think what Cory's going to be bringing in are the Ishkana, just because it plays such good defense, and then the Aerial Volleys, just to tag those Spell Quellers. He has some other decent options, like Death Mist Raptor can do some okay work in the matchup. Worldbreaker can do some okay work in the matchup. So can Gnarlwood Dryad. But the cards that I would expect him to bring in are just the Ishkanas and the Aerial Volleys. I think the other cards are okay, but not great. And he doesn't want to water down his game plan too much.
Oh, I can believe that. Now, for those of you watching this, I know I am going to want to go back and watch that game 1, because that was awesome.
Yeah.
You can find that on the YouTube channel. So for the SCG Live YouTube channel, youtube.com/StarCityGames. That's where all the Versus series get posted, premium archives, the SCG Tour archives, so you can go back and watch Cory Dissinger slice and dice his way through this field, unboxings, and much more. Yours truly even has a few unboxings on there that you can check out. youtube.com/StarCityGames. Absolutely free. Check out those archives.
Man, that game was just so sweet.
That was just awesome.
It was so back and forth. Andrew was ahead in the middle of the game, and then Cory looked like he had basically stabilized and was going to just do his thing, basically. But then Andrew was able to have instead of attacking Cory's life total, he started attacking Cory's sources of card advantage, making really good use of the Spell Quellers being a flash flying threat. And then Andrew had things lined up perfectly, on that last turn. He didn't cast his Avacyn to protect his Thalia, which I thought was a great move because that meant that he would kill Cory even through a Crush of Tentacles. But then Cory, he's got a one-of for every situation. And in that situation, he got his one of Emrakul, and he could just barely cast it. He used all of his mana. He had to discard Hangerback Walker in order to get Delirium, and it was relevant that he could cast Hangerback Walker for 0 because he didn't have the mana, to cast it. He needed it directly in his graveyard. So just a really great back and forth game with a lot of interesting decision points.
All right, well, as we head into game 2 here, Andrew Berke is going to be on the play. It looks like he's going to go down to 6, so we have a little bit more time while the players shuffle. I do want to point out, and I've been thinking about this ever since we first had Cory on camera. So this particular deck, it reminds me of an Ally and Trowsy deck because it's like a big Simic deck, but this actually seems like a deck that David McDarby would play.
Sure.
And Cory just looks like a David McDarby doppelganger. That past
have you ever seen them?
Past versus commander star David McDarby, who now works at Wizards, so he's not able to play in these events. But Cory Dissinger, I've never seen him in the same room with David McDarby before. So
suspicious.
I wonder if his actual name is Mavid McDarby.
Mavid? I don't get it.
That's just the first initial from his last name.
Oh, okay, got it.
Instead. But yeah, man, I've been really impressed with this Crush deck. I'm excited to see just what he's able to do in this tournament. Andrew's going to keep his opening 6. Let's see if he can put on enough pressure before those tentacles start crushing down on him.
Yeah, I am too. And we see a lot of people's discard and counter spells in their sideboard. So playing a deck where you're getting most of your leverage from some big, powerful spell, like Crush of Tentacles, makes a lot of sense to me. Granted, the sideboard games are going to get a little bit more difficult because people do have Transgress the Minds and the Gates floating around in the sideboard, but we really don't see just good main deck discard or counter spells outside of some Ojutai's commands.
All right, well, Andrew did not have a turn 2 play. Cory was able to play a Noose Constrictor on his turn 2. Andrew fires back with a Reflector Mage to bounce it, but Cory has a Nissa's Pilgrimage, which is going to speed up Crush time by a turn, which seems very nice.
Yeah, the other thing about this that's good for Andrew, though, is if Cory does play Crush of Tentacles, Andrew will essentially always be able to just recast that Reflector Mage, get that Octopus token out of there. So that's going to be some very valuable counterplay that Andrew has access to. Cory will probably look to kill or trade with that Reflector Mage if he can get the opportunity to. And I would expect Andrew to always try to make it so that he has access to at least one Reflector Mage post Crush of Tentacles.
All right, so Cory is just going to play a Forest and pass the turn back. So he's not going to redeploy that Noose Constrictor. It would have entered the battlefield tapped anyways. He is likely just going to use that Blighted Woodland on Andrew's end step to get some more basics. Andrew's going to attack with his creatures. Going to knock Cory down to 13, Thalia, Heretic Cathar, and Reflector Mage dealing 5 damage. I'm just going to pass the turn, leaving 3 mana up.
Yeah, and it looks like he's having some mana problems. He hasn't hit his 4th land drop for quite a while. So he has a little bit of a clock, which is good, but Cory's really accelerating into the mid and late game with these ramp spells.
All right, so Blighted Woodland is going to go get a couple more basics for Cory, and this is the turn he can start crushing if he so desires.
And if he has a Dem Protector and he's worried about a negate, it's probably worth it for him to just crush and then Den Protector it back later.
Right, well, there is the Noose Constrictor and a Crush of Tentacles with the Surge cost.
And what's great about this line of play is if Andrew has a negate, at least he's got a creature on the board, so he's developed a little bit. If Andrew had Spell Queller, he'd Crush of Tentacles back to Spell Queller, and the Noose Constrictor would then come back into play. And Andrew, seeing the possibility of that play, saved his Spell Queller until post-Crush. So really good job on Andrew. You can see he's adapting to this new green-blue crush deck.
So a Spell Queller will come down on Cory's end step. It's going to attack Cory down to 11. We're going to see a Reflector Mage. It's going to take care of that 8/8 Octopus token. And here Cory's going to play a Nissa Vastwood Seer on his turn. That's going to go get a Forest.
And
he'll be able to play that to transform, and he still has 5 mana available to crush if he needs to.
Yeah, I like the idea of just playing the Nissa, drawing a card off of it, and then just crushing again. But it looks like he's got a lot of stuff actually to do this turn.
Yes, looks like he's just going to make a 4/4, and then also play a Jace and a Noose Constrictor.
So the shields are up. Andrew needs an answer to this Noose Constrictor if he wants to be able to attack this Nissa. So this is going to force Andrew to do something. Jamoka's command is going to be a little awkward. He really wants another Reflector Mage.
Or maybe even a 4th land to Collected Company.
Now, if for some reason Cory only has 1 land in hand, and I haven't gotten a good look, but he might be running low on cards, Andrew can actually Jamoka's command this Noose Constrictor with his Spell Queller, because if Cory only has 1 card in his hand, he's only going to be able to make the Noose Constrictor 3/3.
Oh, he's got 4.
Yeah.
All right, so Spell Queller is going to get a counter. He's going to kill off the Jace.
And this is a good move. Andrew wants to try to cut Cory off of his sources of card advantage. He can't deal with the Nissa, but he might as well deal with the Jace.
All right, well, Nissa is going to plus and get a Pulse of Marasa. A Nissa's Pilgrimage, which Cory is likely to cast here. It looks like he has Spell Mastery, so he's going to get a bunch of forests. We are getting into Find Emrakul and Cast It time.
Yeah.
And Andrew only has 3 lands.
And this is just one of the best ways to get ahead. It's obviously extremely polarized because Andrew is missing land drops. But not only is he missing land drops, but Cory has these ramp spells that are not only sources of extra mana per turn, but also extra sources of cards. So you can really see that Cory's engine is just firing on all cylinders.
This Noose Constrictor in this deck has been real impressive.
It is.
Especially in this Bank Company matchup.
Yep. Yeah, I think Noose Constrictor, if you're playing a green deck, traditionally the easiest way for you to die is to just flyers. Noose Constrictor does a lot of work to ensure that you have a relatively low curve and you can defend against, those flying assaults.
All right. Well, Andrew does finally find a 4th land, and on his end step, Cory
look how many cards he has.
Cory is going to turn up that Den Protector and get back Crush of Tentacles. Nissa is going to plus and find Emrakul, the Promised End.
And this is just an embarrassment of resources. Cory has, fistful.
Well, Emrakul is going to be cast. Andrew might have Ojutai's command. We're going to find out.
What's Andrew going to do?
Like I've said time and time again, the end is promised. You get a turn of reprieve so you can die with dignity.
Yeah. Oh, man.
All right, on Cory's end step, let's see what Andrew decides to do. Maybe Collected Company. I guess he could Reflector Mage the Emrakul back.
Yeah, Cory just has tons of cards, tons of mana. He can draw 2 cards a turn, and he's just got insane spells like Emrakul that Andrew just can't deal with.
Right, so here is a Collected Company on Cory's end step. So Andrew will get a turn here that Cory will control, and then Andrew will get an extra turn after that. He's looking for a Reflector Mage to get that Emrakul off the battlefield.
And this is a matchup where Andrew really needs to be a bit more aggressive. We saw in this game he had mana problems. In the game before, he didn't have a 3-drop. I think that some of these company players are kind of making a mistake in their deck building, not having enough 2-drops. Andrew Berke only has 11, which is pretty common among the decks we see. But every time I see that I'm on camera, the problem that they have is that they're just not curving out perfectly, or that they're missing land drops. And having access to more 2-drops is going to help with both of those problems.
All right, so Andrew is going to find Tireless Tracker and Selfless Spirit. He's going to draw for his turn. He does not have a 5th land. It looks like we have 2 Sylvan Advocates, a Spell Queller, a Thalia, a Duskwatch Recruiter, and I'm not able to see what the top card is because of the glare.
It's white. It's a white card.
Andrew is going to send in with Spell Queller, Reflector Mage, and Tireless Tracker. We're going to put Emrakul on Spell Queller, Noose Constrictor on Reflector Mage, discarding a card to make it a 3/3. Ashaya is going to block the Tireless Tracker, and so that's going to take care of all of those creatures.
Post-combat, Cory can just sacrifice, the Selfless Spirit.
He will sack the Selfless Spirit. It's going to make Andrew take a point of damage from the Yavimaya Coast.
Might as well.
And now Andrew is going to get, again, that turn of reprieve. Have fun, good luck, my friend.
He's got an Avacyn. He can...
Does only have 4 lands, and he is going to extend the hand. Cory Dissinger is going to win this match. Blue-Green Crush over Bant Company, moving on to 11-1. Emrakul the Promised End.
And Cory really is.
It is exactly what it says on the card.
Yeah, Cory really is the Batman of this tournament too, beating up on the evil Bant Company players, and giving us maybe not the deck we deserve, but the deck we need.
Yeah.